Hi everybody, this is Patrick McCarthy reporting with Tri-Cities Community Television. We're back at our Fountainhead Studios here on Westwood in Port Coquitlam. Of course, we're all kind of getting ready for the October 15th election. And sometimes when you look at elections, you're thinking, what's it all about? And today we have a guest that's going to spend some time just talking about what elections are about and community. Stirling Ward, welcome to the studio.
Well, thank you for asking.
So I know the reason for folks out there who don't know you, you've run for council a few times and you've got a professional career that's very artistic based, I would say.
It definitely is, yes.
So just to tell folks really quickly who you are and kind of what you do.
From the community side, that's primarily why we're here. And I've been extremely involved with city-led committees and everything from the Evergreen Liaison Committee to establishing the artwork at the various stations and various committees. So
Port Moody guy, really. You've been in Port Moody mostly?
Yes, and certainly know Brad West and Richard Stewart and how they run things that way.
Yeah.
No, I really, the purpose really, Patrick, tonight is to cover what is community, what is governance, and then also leadership. So those are sort of the primary things I'd like to cover if we could.
Sure. So you're a person that's being, it would say is part of the arts community in Port Moody. You've done a lot of volunteering committees and you've also ran for office. But so one of the things when you ran for office was community one of the reasons why you ran?
Oh, absolutely. It's interesting because I was a complete newbie on the political realm. And I was basically encouraged to, given the volunteer work that I had done, to get more involved on council. At any rate, while you're knocking on doors, which is what everybody's doing right now as a candidate, I even had a fellow say, Stirling, you don't strike me as a politician. You're too honest for this. And my response really was, well, maybe we need more of that, and there's nothing wrong with having, a level-headed person on council. I think the successful governance is level-headed and leading the community.
But Port Moody, though, when we talk about community, like it's going through a massive change, right? Obviously, with new towers and stuff going in development. So when you look at the community, and we can focus on this region if you want. But what is either community for Port Moody, or what does community mean to you, and what are you sort of concerned about or want to sort of get across?
Well, community is really a primary element of our humanity. When people come together, the tribe, if you will, is successful. It grows, it survives, and basically within the community, say, the one person's strength may be covering for another person's weakness and vice versa, right? So there's huge strength in community where people are working together. And it really starts at the top. I would suggest that out of a community that's working together, leadership comes from that, where people have been involved in the community, they care about people, they do things for people, so that's the strength of the community.
But when you hit on that, though, because to me, I find that the word community, it's a holistic word, right? Sounds really kind of, I like that. I'm going to volunteer for my community.
Right.
But it seems like in the past, if you were go back to, if you and I were the only two guys, farming fields here, we need a community because you're going to help me build my barn, I'm going to help you build yours. But,
Absolutely.
But now with 300,000 people here, a high turnover of folks coming in or new people coming in, where do you think we are with the community?
That's a good point. You've got the people who have been here a long time. You mentioned Port Moody. I'm sure Millardville, other areas within the Tri-Cities, we've got areas that, people have been here a long time. So on the North Shore, for instance, the family, there's the, Sunnyside. It's called Sunnyside. Now that family has been around since 1883. The city of Port Moody was incorporated in 1886. So they've been around for a long time. So you've got people who've been in a community a long time, and then all of a sudden, as you mentioned, we have an influx of a lot of people in a very short time coming into the community. How do you maintain, the culture? How do you maintain the history and still feed everyone? House everyone, right? So I think that, careful planning, and that really begins with the leadership of the community. And it certainly has to be led in a level-headed, thoughtful way, where dissension and all of that is not playing a part in the growth of the community.
So I guess we come to governance. I just want to hammer on the community part.
Yes,
because
okay.
to me, my example, we've done 45 plus interviews for all these candidates, and it's interesting because I say to them, I think our community is changing. And the investment that I made in the community, I invested it for the collective good of my family as well as the community,
Right.
but also to future generations or my kids' generation and their kids.
Yes.
But that doesn't seem to be working in today's community.
With the 45 people or so that you've interviewed, what would their common denominator?
Some people are very happy. If you talk about affordability, they want everybody to have affordability, but they'll turn around and say they're very happy that their house is worth $1 million or $2 million, right? They seem to be also when you talk about how are your kids going to afford to live here, they're like, well, everybody should have the right to cash out and move. So to me, it's like, and I look back at history. I come from Poco. Like Port Moody, you had generational families that you knew, right?
Right.
And so there was a connection back, not too far, but some people were here longer, but there was a connection. And there was a sense that you were moving in, or you would take over a house, or eventually you'd scrape your way to getting a house, and then your kids would go to school where you went. It's that magic moment, right?
Right.
But now it seems like we're just in this community, if you're just transient, and moving out, why would you invest in it? Because you're not planning to be here more than 5-10 years and then move on. Where I think when I came to the community, you think I could settle here. I don't think that's happening today.
Right. I understand. It's a difficult situation because it's not just the Tri-Cities. It's really throughout the Lower Mainland and even over Victoria on the island. People are sort of moving out. It's interesting because we were talking earlier about the towers, say downtown, Yaletown area, things like that. When that first went in, they never believed that it would be a success as it was to have families in towers. And that's what happened. Now downtown has changed now, and those families are moving out to I'll call it the burbs. But there's no place for them to move to.
Yeah.
I mean, the housing is such a limited.
Yeah. But you're an artist. Your career was in art. So we're talking Yaletown. We talked about it as a case study. I worked there for 10, 15 years. So I'm not an expert on Yaletown, but as our business, we moved into Yaletown because rent was cheap. We couldn't rent downtown, right?
Yes.
And we had a small consulting firm, but eventually, by the time we left, we basically were moving to downtown because we were doing well. But and then we weren't doing well. We moved back to Yaletown because we could afford it, right? So, but at the same time, you saw that it was dead in the evening. There was no tourism.
Yes.
There was no one. There was no restaurants.
Absolutely.
And Expo '86 came along.
Yes.
Right. And next thing you know, people are starting to live in these warehouses, and they're paying $500,000 for a house. You know, a one two bedroom house. I should have bought a couple of them at that time. But
yes.
So then it became.
You didn't?
Yuppie. I didn't know. Then it became hip, right?
Yes.
So
totally.
so that's a gentrification of people who used to live there who have now moved and replaced by another layer based on financial influx, right?
Yes.
And Expo '86 taught us about how to sell condos without anybody really being in to see them, right?
Yeah.
So there's a huge investment with no people, but assets. So are we seeing that now happening again when we talk about Port Moody?
We are.
Right.
The Vancouver, literally, I mean, if you think about, 100 years, that's nothing to other centers in the world. And what Expo did was it really introduced the world to Vancouver. And people looked around and said, my goodness, what we have. I've been fortunate enough to travel quite a bit. So, when you come back, you recognize it. I'm like a West Coast boy, probably one of the few around. But for people who've been in the same space forever, they don't recognize perhaps what we actually have. Other people have moved here, and they do. We have a very stable political arena, generally financially safe as well. No one's going to be expropriating your land or anything like that. But back to, you brought up a good point, because generally artists, they'll create an area and people get to like it a lot and then move into the area. And it began with Gastown, then Yaletown, and then from Yaletown it went to between Maine and Cambie, really, the warehouses there. And it's moved since then. So I don't know if maybe artists I don't know if it's economic or just what the situation is of how you sort of discover where you'd like to work and live and play.
I think it's economics. I mean, you can't
drives
make
it.
much money as an artist, so you have to go to places where people don't want to be.
Yes.
And then you create a community, right? So back to the community term, and then the
Perfect.
community expels you because your job is done, right? So they build another, community which is based on a different framework as yourself.
Yes.
And so then that will be expelled, and another layer will come in. So to me, and this is my opinion,
Right.
Community sometimes is a very holistic, lovely word, but it seems like the city itself will just slough you off when it doesn't require the services you offer, and you're not investing in the community, you're just investing in the moment. So it's kind of almost like to me anyway, I think it's a nice word to say you can stay here as long as we need you, and then get lost.
It evolves.
I don't think it's evolving though.
Yeah.
Do you think it's evolving? A community can't evolve.
Yes, it has to.
How does it evolve? Does it get faster, smarter, more expensive, richer?
Okay, well, we talked about Expo, but then you've got the Winter Olympics. And the same thing happened for Squamish, Whistler, Pemberton even.
Yeah, but let's go back to community. So
Okay.
what is the
But those are
what is the
communities.
perfect community for you though? To me, a community is inclusive, right? It deals with
Yes.
the sense that we should all feel we belong
Okay.
in a community. That's how what a community means to me. So what does it mean to you?
So, well, within the community, then you have governance.
Sure, but let's go back to
Okay.
before you go to governance.
So,
what
okay.
what is a community to you? What is a perfect community? What do you
The
what-
perfect community is where people know each other, support each other, where people feel safe, where the lowest is raised.
Yeah.
Where
Anybody's allowed in?
certainly,
Sure. Yeah.
it has to be inclusive.
Yeah.
And that's maybe what we're struggling with right now, because that change is happening so quickly right now. And people that, have not really, they've been in their own circle or whatever, but they haven't realized just how quickly it is changing. And we have a lot of people moving in.
And moving out.
And moving out because they're not liking what they're seeing. The same thing's happening in Vancouver. I mean, if you go downtown there at night, it's a different place than 10 years ago, right? So, and you're talking about infrastructure. Like, there has to be housing for the firefighters, the police, all the service people for the community, within the community, not that they have to drive from Langley, into the Tri-Cities, for instance. So, we have to be sensitive to that.
Yeah, I think though, it's like, we got only a few minutes left here, but it's like, what about the bus boy, the waiter, the cop, the barista?
Exactly.
There's nothing for the firefighters to put out if you don't have a coffee shop that could burn down.
But no,
So,
I totally get it. But
well, here's I ask a question. I was just reading about community.
Yes.
It's an interesting topic. We could talk on forever, but affordability is kind of one of the things we've heard a lot about in this election, right? And we're down to about 5 minutes. But it's interesting the different ideas that come out of the people who are in council and those who are about to go into council. But it's also interesting how different. Sometimes those opinions are different. And one thing I think is interesting to look at is Whistler. I just found out this today they have Whistler has a housing authority, which basically their goal is to house 75% of their workforce in Whistler.
Okay.
Because they won't be able to afford it, and so they're doing that, right?
That's good.
We have the same problem here.
Okay.
We don't have enough housing for people who want to work here in a coffee shop.
Patrick, this is perfect because we can look to other communities. That's a community, and see what's working, and we need something like that probably in the Tri-Cities.
Yeah.
Not probably, we do.
We do, yeah.
And
not my idea, but I'm just in a sense the idea of learning from other folks. But sometimes we come in with a single view of what that should be, I guess.
Absolutely.
So before we go, you talked about governance. So I'll give you
Yes.
the last couple of minutes there. What do you think is missing, or what is important about governance within this community?
I'm not going to go into what might be missing. I think the most ideal governance is where there needs to be a sense of space that people can work together, feel safe in that community, in that working environment, are honored. The very best that are in them is raised. All of that. And you achieve more, everybody's happy, and innovative thinking.
So really, it sounds like you're talking about Port Moody Council is continually at odds with each other, going through 5 mayors that are probably one of them is going to be the new mayor. 2 councillors will be gone. It'll be a complete churn of that city when it comes to governance.
I don't think it's so much, specifically Port Moody. There are other councils that are having difficulty.
Yeah.
But certainly, if people sort of look at who are those people that are sharing their vision, of those 47, whatever number of people, candidates running, who are those people that are sharing their vision? Not attacking their fellow person that's running. I mean, anybody that's putting their name forward, and I can attest to that, you're putting your life on hold for 4 years, to serve the community. It's not a small job.
It's a big job. Yeah.
Exactly, and it's a full commitment. And if you're committed, totally, you're not going to be focused on the person, beside you who's running, doing exactly what you're doing and cutting them down. You're going to be upholding them. So anyway, teamwork. It comes down to teamwork. And difference of opinion at the table is a great thing, because out of that, in the creative world, for instance, that I come from, you've got some serious egos. Everybody comes into the room, and they're called yellow tag meetings, and everybody hangs their hat at the door, comes in, a problem's solved and or presented, and everybody goes around the room and presents their concept. There's nothing wrong. Everything's
it's a safe
good.
Space, basically.
And you build it up, and you come out of the room with a solution that no one thought of, and everybody feels good about it. So that's where you want to be.
Well, thank you, Stirling, for coming in,
Yes.
for sure. And
Thank
I think it's always good to have a philosophical question about, you know, the stuff that we're all here for,
Yes.
which is community, and we're picking our leader October 15th. So.
Absolutely.
So that's one of the reasons that Tri-City Community Television actually have interviewed over 47 candidates for this election, including a 30-minute plus a 1-minute video, because we want you to actually look at the leadership and governance that within our region and make your decision with education. I mean, and figure out who these people are. So I want to thank Stirling for coming in again, and thank you all out there for watching Tri-Cities Community Television. Thanks for coming. That's
Yes,
great.
absolutely.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
Yeah.